Howdy folks, and welcome back to another Lime Crime swatching video. Today we are doing the new Prelude collection. I have both palettes, and I have an actual list of shade comparisons, so this is going to be a long one. Let's just go ahead and get started with the Chroma palette, because that's what I have first on my list. So I actually haven't touched either of these palettes beyond like swatching the first few shades of this, because I did try to film this video earlier, but the lighting sucked and I was tired after work, and I just didn't want to do it until I was ready. So I did already start doing this, but that's alright. The first shade we're going to be swatching is Nymph. This is a shimmery, kind of peachy, rosy sort of tone. And as usual, I'll be swatching on my arm, hopefully trying to avoid that tattoo right there. And so there's the shade Nymph right there. And on my list, I have Charm from the XS Rose Gold, which of course is all the way at the bottom of my stack. I'm going to close this so I don't actually gouge any of the shadows. I have Charm from this palette, which is our lovely shade down here. As you can see, this one's quite a bit pinker in tone, just kind of like based on my fingers, but go ahead and give that a swatch, and it is quite a bit darker as well. And then I also have Love from the XL palette, which again is at the bottom here. So here's our XL palette. And Love is right up here. So there's that shade. Again, pretty darn similar. Okay, so you can see those two are actually really close in tone. This one's just slightly pinker, and this one's a little bit more orange. This is from the new palette. And our last one for this shade is Mystic from the XL2. If you hear noises in the background, that's my cat cleaning himself. I apologize. He's very loud. And Mystic is... oh, where'd you go? Down here. So I don't know about that one. That one's quite a bit lighter, but we'll see. Okay. Yeah, that's much lighter. It's got sort of a green sparkle to it, but there is the first shade. Our next shade that we're going to be swatching is Eros here, which is a very yellow gold, kind of like almost bronzy but mostly gold shimmer right here. So that's one swatch of that right there. Super bright, pigmented, shiny. And my first dupe comes from the Venus 3. It's the shade Heavenly up here, which is actually more of like a glitter topper shade. It's very hard pressed. And I don't think it quite comes close, but like I always say, just check and see. So there's Heavenly underneath. Definitely a lot lighter pigmentation, more glitter. I also found Gilded from the XS Gold palette, which is right here. And that is the shade down here, which again is like a very chunky, glittery shade. I can hopefully kind of see the chunks in that right there. Let's watch that on the other side. So definitely not even a similar texture and much less yellow. And lastly for this shade is the Candles color from the Birthday palette, which is this pure yellow right here. I thought I'd swatch that just for fun. And so there's Candles. And you can tell that's just a straight up yellow and not a gold. Our next shade here is this really light pastel blue called Seafoam. This is like a soft shimmer. As you can see, it's not super pigmented. It's kind of one of those sheeny kind of shades. Can you even see that on my arm? I can barely see that. It's like a topper shade. Kind of reminds me of like the Moonchild highlighters, or like if you have the Kat Von D Alchemist palette. Okay, and then we have Frosty from the Winter Lights palette, which is up here and looks already like it's going to be more pigmented than that last one. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, no, those are very similar shades. I don't even know if you can see this right now. Yeah, it's like barely showing up, both of them. We also have the mini blue palette that came out last year for the holidays, the Venus XS Frosted palette. which I love the packaging. Like, can we just admire how glittery and beautiful this is? And we are looking at the shade Icicle in here, which actually looks more like a matte blue. So that automatically knocks that one out for dupes. And that's just a very light matte, like almost white blue. This next shade is Triumph, which is glittery, well not glitter, but shimmery white shade here. It's just a stark white pretty much. That's what it looks like to me anyways. Maybe a little bit cream. It's actually got a bit of a gold reflect too, if you can tell. Actually, that's more interesting than I thought. And we have, again, another really sheer, like, topper shade. And for that one, I found Icing from this little pocket candy palette, which I don't love the quality of, if you've heard me talk about this before, but it's this Icing shade in the middle, which this one's a stark white, I can tell. I actually don't hate this shade out of this palette. So yeah, that one obviously has a lot more pigmentation, and that was one swipe, so that's a pretty good color actually. And then I have Radiant from the XL2. So get this palette back out. If I can open it. Come on. And Radiant is this shade right here. And that's really similar, but that one has more of a pink shift than a gold shift to it. So I don't think we have a dupe for this one. For our next shade, we have Cyprus down here, which is an absolutely gorgeous dark purple matte. It's actually more of a satin matte now that I'm looking at it. It's got a little bit of a sheen to it, but not a whole lot. And that's an interesting swatch of it, but I'm sure it'll blend out just fine. Like I said, I haven't played with these palettes on the eyes yet, and I've had them for like 3 weeks because I've been trying to make this video. But that is Cyprus right there. And I pulled two this time. First is from the Plushies Sweet Blends, and it's the shade Dragon Fruit, which is very, very pink in comparison, and also a lot lighter. Yeah, that's straight up pink. Okay, and then also Botticelli from the original Venus XL, which is this dark purple down here. And you can see those are really close, and I'll swatch that one, if the camera will focus, right next to our new shade. And so while they are really similar in depth, Botticelli is obviously a lot more pink, whereas Cyprus right here has a little bit of a cooler undertone and has a bit more gray in it than red. So that's a really nice, unique shade. Our next shadow here is Saturn down at the bottom. This is kind of a gray-blue shimmer. Ooh, that's real reflective. That's beautiful. Okay. Can't wait to swatch that one. Ooh. So that's absolutely gorgeous. It's a little bit green, but mostly just blue. And we are looking again to our Excess Frosted palette for this shade right up here, which is called Chili. So that's a little bit more of a neon blue. I wouldn't say exactly neon, but more so than the other. And that obviously has a lot more green in it, but that's a really beautiful shade as well. And we also have our Winter Lights palette, which came with a lot of cool tones actually, and I never did a swatch video for this one, but you know, I suppose you're sort of getting one right now. And this is the shade Topaz, which is considerably deeper, but we're gonna swatch it anyways. Yeah, so that's a much darker and more glittery shade than our new one right there. Our second to last shade is this sort of cream light matte shade down here, a little bit pink toned, but not a whole lot, called Olympia. That seems pretty nice and pigmented. These all feel really nice too. These are not like scratchy shadows. Okay, if you can even see that on my arm right there, it's pretty close to my skin tone, which reminded me a lot of the Cameo shade from the Venus Immortalis palette, which is down here, which again, closer to my skin tone if it were a little bit more dead looking. And then you can see that next to it is a bit more white, obviously more cool toned. Olympia is right here, and then Cameo's right there. And lastly, we have Scallop from the XL palette. Or not lastly, second to last. And this is very much more pink. It's got a little bit of peachy tones to it. And there's Scallop right there. It's got more of a peach tone. And then this is the last shade. It is Divine from the original Venus palette. And this is a little bit dustier, darker. I'll show you on this side. Yeah, so that has more pigment to it. You can see the two in the middle are definitely like almost my skin tone. If you were to mix them, you'd probably get my skin. So no dupes here. Our very last shade in this palette is this deep dark blue called Genesis. This is also a matte shade. It's got, does it have micro glitter in it or not really? Oh, it does. Okay, this is like a sparkle shade, or like, what do people call it? Satin? No. I forget. They call it something. But, okay, there's that one swatch. Let me give it another swatch because I want to see if this can be built up. So there it is again on my finger. Okay, so that definitely can be built up. I'm trying to blend it a little bit. Seems like it's blending fairly well. Again, I'll have to play with it on my eyes and see. But our first dupe is the Birthday palette, and that is the shade Wrapped down here, which obviously does not have those micro glitters. It's definitely more of a metallic, but let's try it anyways. And so that's a much richer blue, whereas the other one's kind of dusky and dark, which I really like. We also have our excess Frosted palette again, which I'm finding a lot of these. This was last year's holiday palette. I'm going to give a little bit more of a swatch of that. And put that right there. And that one really doesn't swatch well, honestly. Like, I haven't really even touched that palette to know how it performs, so I don't have an answer for that right now, but oofda. Not great. Also not a dupe. And then the last one is Blueberry from the Plushies Sweet Blends quad, which I actually like the Plushies formula a lot, and I think these are like really nice shadows for being marketed as a sheer. I mean, like, that's a good quality swatch versus the Frosted palette, so I like these. They are definitely not dupes, but they are all relatively nice except this guy right here. Alrighty, now that we are all done with the Chroma palette, it is time to move into the Exposed palette, which honestly, when these both came out, I was so stoked for this color story. Like, I honestly was already thinking to myself, man, wouldn't it be cool if Lime Crime had a nude palette, and then they delivered, so I am very excited to get into this. Let's just start swatching. Our first shade is Aphrodisia, which looks white, but it has all these blue reflects in it, and like, I don't know if you can even tell, but that's like a kind of sheer blue shade. When you really zoom in on it, you can see all like the little blue speckles in there. It's a really interesting looking shade in the pan. And I have not swatched anything from this palette yet because I only started with the Chroma last time. So, okay, so we have another sheer kind of blue topper shade. I can see this being good for the inner corner, but honestly kind of bummed out they put two really similar shades in both palettes. And actually, let's just go ahead and swatch them together, because now I'm curious. And, I mean, if these are identical, I'm going to be sad. So, Seafoam. This one looks maybe just a little bit more sheer, but I don't know. Yep. Seafoam is a little bit more green, but honestly, the two together are not terribly different. So, you know, keep that in mind if that's the shade that you're interested in. We also have Cloud from the Birthday palette. Sorry, I don't know why my camera keeps going out of focus. It's right down here. And this one's just our shimmery white that I've swatched in other videos before. So yeah, there's Cloud right there. Definitely more white than the other two. And Wish from the Winter Lights palette. I actually found a lot for this shade, so that's interesting. Wish is down here at the bottom, because I initially thought this would definitely be more white, but now I'm seeing that it's not quite so much. Wish has a little bit more pink to it. Not a whole lot. And the last one is Marble from the Immortalis palette, which if you saw my review for this palette, you know that this shade makes me kind of sad because it sucks. And I'll use this finger for it. It's another, I figured out what that word I'm looking for is. It's sequin. It's got the glitter in it. It's a matte with glitter. It's called a sequin shadow. I completely forgot until this moment. Oh my god, I almost knocked my palette off my desk. That would be a bummer. This is Marble right here, swatched at the top. And as you can see, for a matte, there's like nothing there. So, a little bit of a bummer, but yeah, there's that shade right there. Our next shade in this palette is Virgin, which is kind of a pinky nude. It's very light. It looks almost white as I'm swatching it, but it's definitely more pink in person. You can see. Oh, that's a thick chunker of a shade. You can see it left kind of a chunk and some streaks, but that's overall really pretty. It's like a candy floss pink. I'm so white you can't even see it. There we go. And my dupe for this one is Blank Canvas from the original XL palette. But this one definitely, I already know, is more of like a cream tone and not so much that candy pink. I'll swatch anyways. So there's Blank Canvas, right next to Virgin. And then we also have Angelic from the XS Rose Gold, which I pretty much already know is definitely going to be more pink in tone. A little bit darker, definitely. And that's a little bit more ruddy as well. Hopefully you can see all three right there. And lastly, we have Festive from the XS Vixen palette, which again is one of these really cool glittery palettes that came out this last holiday season. I just love the packaging for these. And that would be this one up here, which might more closely resemble the Rose Gold palette than the new one, but we'll see. Okay, so definitely more pink, less of that kind of brick red in there, but certainly not as white as our new shade or the Blank Canvas shade. Our third shade up here is a very kind of pinky toned brown nude called Flesh, and this is another matte shade. That one swatched really nice actually. Really enjoy that. My first dupe comes from the XS Green palette, which one's actually is Holidays, and that is the shade Trinket right here. It's a very neutral brown as well. And that one's a little bit lighter, not as pink, which is to be expected because in a green palette you don't want it to be too pink. Melon Smoothie from the Plushies Sweet Blends. I'll pull this one out again. It's this guy on the bottom here. And again, I love the way these plushie palettes feel. It's not like the Venus palettes aren't soft, but the plushies are just so much softer. Ooh! Woohoo! We have a dupe, I think! This one is like ever so slightly more pink, but our new shade right here. I mean, look how close these guys are. I think if this was the one you wanted, you can get away with just using the Sweet Blends. And then our last dupe for this one is Ripe from the XL2 palette. And that is our shade up here. This is considerably darker, but you know the drill. Yeah, no way. No way. But yeah, I did find one this time, which is close enough even though they are ever so slightly different, so neat. Our last shade on the top row is this gray, well I guess it's sort of like a gray-brown metallic called Storm. That's what that looks like right there. It's a beautiful kind of dingy color for such a pink, like kind of nudie palette. Oh, that's pretty. So that's actually a lot more brown on the skin than I expected it to be. I saw this initially and thought it would be more of a gray, but that's certainly more brown, but we'll swatch what I found anyways. We're gonna look at Comet from this palette, this XS Frosted again. And right off the bat, that's not even close, but yeah, so that's a lot lighter. It's kind of like a blue-brown duochrome. So there's that one. And we also have the shade Luminous from the XS Silver, which I love. I'll swatch this really lightly because it's so glittery and chunky. This is that one that I raved about in my initial review of this that I thought reminded me of Fool's Gold, which fellow Nevadans will understand. And this is like truly more of a silver than it is a brown. And lastly we have, oh no, not lastly, I actually found a lot for this one again. Shoot. I pull out my Immortalis palette and we'll swatch both Echo and Hail, although looking at it at first glance I think Echo probably is closer than Hail. There's those two right there. There's Hail and Echo. Again, not anywhere near as deep. And then here is the last shade. This is from our Winter Lights palette. The shade Suits You, or yeah. This is like another sequin shade. It's more of a matte gray with glitter in it. Yeah, that's definitely more gray. So that's actually a really beautiful, unique color. I like that. I like that it was different than what I thought it was initially going to be, but beautiful. Starting out on our bottom row, we have a matte brown called Nude down here, which is exactly how it sounds. This is just a matte nude brown. So I could probably go on forever about dupes for this guy right here, but it's got a very reddish tone to it, which a lot of Lime Crime's matte browns tend to have. And we have our first palette right here, which is the Holidays, and we're looking at the shade Prancer in here, which is again just a warm brown. We did swatch this one earlier, and that is nowhere close. We also have Idolized from the original XL palette. Where did that one go? And that's in the upper corner over here. Again, kind of a ruddy nude brown. Okay, so that one is a bit closer. It's definitely more orange and sort of peachy a little bit, if you can tell. And our last shade for this color is Ripe from the XL2 palette, which I just swatched a minute ago, last 2 shades ago. But we're gonna do it again. And there's Ripe again. And I think we found last time that this one is a bit more true neutral, with ever so slightly warm tones to that, but definitely not as red. It doesn't have that sort of hint of pink in it. So, no dupes here, but, you know, still just a nude brown. Our next shade down here is another gold metallic called 1484, which is considerably less yellow than the last palette. I don't think I even need to swatch that to show you that it's less yellow. This is more of a, not a white gold, but like, I don't know, let's just look at it. It's sort of a peachy gold. I do really enjoy that. I think I like this a lot better than the yellow gold from our last palette. We'll again be comparing it to Heavenly from the Venus 3, although as we saw earlier, this is definitely more of a topper shade, and you can still tell based on how sheer it is when I swatch it. So yeah, not quite. And then we also have Crown from the XL2. And Crown is this shade up here. And this has more, not green, it's really not green, but it's got sort of that cool tone look to it. So these are definitely not the same. I think the shade stands alone, and I really enjoy it. Our next shadow down here is Abyss, which is kind of a purpley nude. Again, this one appears to have a little bit of a sheen, not quite a sequin shade, but this is definitely more of a satin matte, similar to the last purple, so I wonder if that makes it easier to formulate, because purples are notoriously, like, hard to blend, I guess. So we have that. It's got more brown to it than the last purple shade, however, this is not like a stark purple. And to dupe it out, we have our Venus 2 palette, And of course we are looking at, oops, that is the Venus one. Wow. Wow. Turns out I can't even read. This is the Venus 2. And we are looking at the shade Mud down here. I think Mud is just a great name for an eyeshadow, honestly. I don't know why I enjoy that so much. But here is Mud. And that has more red tones than purple. It's definitely warmer, but like the purple is not super cool toned in this one either. And our Venus 3, we have this shade down here, if it'll focus, called Ecstasy. Which is again kind of more of a satin shade. And a bit more sheer. But not quite similar in tone. So there's that one. And finally, you guys, we are on the last shade. This is Immortal. This is a very dark, kind of gray-brown matte. Which again has a little bit of a satin sheen to it, but not a whole lot. I think if you were to put this on your eyes, you wouldn't really notice. And that does make it swatch really well. It's not quite black. I don't think this is a black shade. It's like a really, really deep, dusty brown. And for this one, we're going to be looking now this time at the Venus 1. And take us to the shade Icon over here. Which is again a very deep brown. But this one has a bit of a warmer tone. I can already tell looking at it. Yeah. So you can see the warmth more from the Venus 1 palette. We are also going to be looking at Plated from the XS Silver, which is a straight up gray. And doesn't look all too similar. Yeah. That's a gray. And lastly, we have Slade from the Winter Lights palette. And that is this brown up here, which again tends to pull a little bit more cool toned. But we'll see if it matches this shade, because it does look really similar. Okay. So this actually looks closer to the shade from the Venus 1, I think. Yeah, not bad. Definitely not a dupe, but not bad. Thank you guys for watching my swatch video, and you know, here's all my aftermath. I got all my palettes laid out on my desk right here. It's a mess. I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and I apologize for not doing a review portion, but I just have not had the time to put these on my eyes yet. So if you would like to see some eye looks, let me know. If you want a review, let me know. It might be a while because I'm swamped this month, but I will do my best to get that out there for you. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for whatever I happen to put out next if you're interested. Thank you, and I will see you later. Bye!